Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Powerful Man Show. I'm your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. How you doing, brother?
I am doing well. I'm really happy to be here with you. I've missed this, and overall, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I did have one of those nights that every father can relate to, every businessman can relate to. I woke up at 1:30 in the morning, and just gonna go back to sleep. It's hitting me pretty hard right now. But luckily, you and I have the lifestyle that shortly after this, I could lay down if I decide to. But I'm actually going to go to the gym. I missed my morning workout. I made a commitment to myself that I could skip it this morning as long as I went after this. So excited about that. Everything seems to be running smoothly.
Nice. So you didn't wake up because of one of the kids?
No, I just woke up at 1:30. It's like 1:20 something. I go, it must be close to 4 a.m. when I wake up. So I rolled over, grabbed my phone just to check the time because I thought, if it's 5-10 minutes earlier. And nope, 1:20 something. My wife I talked to her this morning. She had the same thing. Like, she was up and down all night. So I waited a couple hours. Then I went out to the couch, did some reading, laid on the couch, got up, just went about my day.
Nice. Good for you. I admire you being here.
Man, I love doing this for the guys. We did you were gone, Tim. We did a Facebook Live and Ask Me Anything into our Facebook community. And I share that with you, the guys, because it was so neat to see how many men came. And one of the things we talked about is how your partner, Amelia, and my wife, Erin, support us because they see the results the guys get. So they give us space to do the podcast. They give us space to do the webinars and things that we do for free for the community and coaching the men. And it's because of the results. We just got a post in our Slack channel. We use Slack to communicate with the team. And yet another win. We share the wins the guys have throughout the team because that's what we're here for. And almost every day there's a new win that's shared where it's a man that's rekindled with his wife or reconnected with his children or had these are business owners. So they also have big business successes, right? Because that's one thing, domino starts to fall over. Life just gets better in all areas. So as you can tell, I get passionate about that.
Yeah, me too. It's awesome. So there's something I'd love to talk with you about. I was speaking with one of the men this week, and he was really frustrated, really frustrated. And it was kind of weird because I wasn't used to hearing him talk this way. Usually he talks about the things that he does for his family and his wife and his staff with a lot of gratitude and appreciation, right? Because he's just grateful to be in the position that he's in. He's done a lot of work on himself. He's turned things around, pulled his marriage back from the brink of divorce, really been able to free up his time in his business. Just really phenomenal man. Yet tons of resentment was creeping in for him this week. And it seems like it had been creeping in for a few weeks, but he had been pushing it aside and ignoring it and continuing to just do what he does. Be there for his family, be there for his staff, be there for everybody else, except for really himself. Emerged. He was doing his routines. However, his routines have become a thing to do. He enjoys them, but he also knows it's kind of like going to the gym. It's kind of like working out. I enjoy working out and I'm doing it because it's for my health, right? And what came out of it was that he realized that he hadn't been doing anything for himself. Been doing it, yes, working out, but actually where there isn't really an outcome attached. Like when he goes to work out, he's a competitive guy, as a lot of us are, and he pits himself against other people in the gym and he pushes himself. So he enjoys it. But like I said, it becomes another thing to do. So the realization that came out of the conversation with him was just that. He realized, hang on a minute, I'm beginning to resent my family and my staff and all the great things I've got going on because in actual fact, I am not filling my cup. I'm not doing things for myself. And I just wanted to bring it to the table and get your input on that and your experience with it.
Well, yeah, I think I know which guy you're talking about here, but I'm not positive. So I'm going to use a lot of generalizations in my comments. The one thing that I noticed that you said right away is something that a lot of us men especially fall into, is that where resentment starts to bubble up. And you said that he stuffed it down and suppressed it, for several weeks, which my guess is it's probably for longer than several weeks. These are little micro
Mhm.
resentments that added up over time. And that's a pattern a lot of us have gotten into. In fact, it's a pattern a lot of guys get into that creates the problems in their marriage, right? They stuff down little things like their wife asking them to take the kids so they can go out, or whatever it is. And when they already had plans. And so what happens for most men, they stuff it down, and then at the most inconvenient time, it comes up, right? They finally hit a breaking point, and then they react, they lash out. And they lash out over one thing, but they've really stacked a bunch of things on there. And so
Mhm.
what I would tell him, I would tell myself, because I'm still guilty of this, right? I think all of us are in the human condition. And I would tell the guys listening is as soon as a resentment comes up for you, right, you want to address it. And sometimes you don't need to address it with the person. So, for example, this could be his wife or his kids, but what is occurring for you, right? What's coming on inside of you that's causing this resentment? And I think that's a really important distinction that most men don't, right? So, what we've been taught is if you're going to have a confrontation or a clearing conversation, you have it with the person. So, for example, maybe there's something that happens that I'm resenting of you, Tim, right? Can't imagine that ever happening, but let's just say it does, right? That could, then I might address it to you. But a better thing for me would be to figure out what is happening inside of me that's causing me to be resentful.
Mhm.
Because odds are it has nothing to do with you.
Mhm.
You're just being Tim. So that's the first thing I would look at right there is what is it for him that's causing the resentment? It's kind of that idea. If you can spot it in somebody else, it's inside of you.
Yeah, great advice. It's interesting because it's almost like it was self-sabotage for this guy as well. Like everything is going so well for him that all he really had to do was, to your point, my advice to him was similar. What's causing the resentment? He realized, hang on a minute, I'm getting annoyed at doing all these things with other people because I'm not doing anything for me. I'm not taking myself off to go and play golf, even though I want to. And his story there is, oh, well, I don't have time, which was absolute bullshit. He was just choosing to fill his time with other things because he'd just gotten into a habit of putting his needs last, right?
Yep.
And whatever, there was other things he wasn't doing for himself. He wasn't taking himself off for a massage. He's used to getting a massage every couple of weeks. He works out hard. It's important for him that he's able to actually relax, get his body worked, and look after his body as well. It's one of the ways that he helps to prevent injury, right? But he just wasn't doing these things. And at the same time, the flip side of this is imagine the standard of life that he's operating at when he is there for his family in the way that he wants to be, where he has created this space in his business in the way whereby he's operating in his best zone, where he's the happiest and he has time off. And he's also then able to do all these things for himself as well. Now, for some guys, the edge of that, it can be an upper limit within self-worth sometimes to a degree, right? It feels uncomfortable to actually operate and receive all the success at that level because they're not used to it. They're not used to it being that easy because it can be, once you realize the resentment, the slight shift. It can be kind of easy to just course correct and then experience a new level of success. Um, but in the process of going into that zone, some people, and this guy, one of the things that was coming up for him was self sabotage. You want to bring themselves back down to the familiar level where there's struggle and there's chaos and they won't speak up and it creates, all of a sudden there's an argument with his wife and he stops doing something. He expresses a resentment in a way that's unhealthy. Then he's got to rebuild again, and something happens in a business, he's got to step in again. It just keeps this up and down.
Yeah. This is a cycle, as you said. And this is why, when we work with the guys, especially the one on one guys, we start them right away on unconscious commitments
Mm.
because this is what happens, guys, when you upper limit is you go through this guilt and shame loop. And it's super common for all of us, especially entrepreneurs, is when things become easy and effortless. In other words, you're making more money in your business, Your wife is happy. You're probably having more sex or better sex than you had in a long time, if ever. The kids are doing well. And you look around and you feel guilty because you're not hustling anymore. You're not grinding it out. And you feel shame around that because the subconscious story you have about how a successful business person should be or whatever is different. Right now, you have two things that are within conflict. You have this story or this belief system about the way it should be. It should be hard. My wife and I always fight. All of these old stories that you don't like, but that's why it's unconscious. They're unconscious commitments. They're in your subconscious mind. And that creates a guilt and shame loop within inside of you. You start to feel guilty and you don't know why you're feeling guilty because you're off golfing and you shouldn't be, or whatever else it is. And when that happens, then yeah, you have to self-sabotage. The only two options here are really dig into those unconscious commitments so you can pull the weed out from the root. Because just going golfing is just trimming, going through a patch of weeds and just cutting the tops off. They're going to grow back. So you really need to go deep and do that. And it's tough to do on your own. Honestly, it's really much easier to do or better to do with a professional coach that specializes in this. And then at that point, you can start breaking down that guilt shame loop. And what we talk about a lot with the guys in the inner circle as well, which is our 1-year mastermind program, is we talk about making that ceiling that you're hitting, the upper limit ceiling, your new floor. And that new floor can be uncomfortable, Tim, at first, right? Because you're not used to playing on that level for a lot of guys. So that's why really working on those and getting out of that guilt shame loop, because that guilt shame loop sucks, right? When you feel guilty, you feel ashamed, and then you try to overcorrect or course correct. And a lot of times when you're in that guilt shame loop, you snap at people around you. And that's where you can really you got to really worry about it, because that guilt shame loop also holds resentment in there, because you start resenting people for you feeling this way. And for all they don't look at me, how hard I work for them. I provide all these things for them, and all of these stories that come in. And then when you do unleash that, it's going to be sometime when it's inappropriate. You're going to feel crappy about the way you handled it. You're going to feel shame the way you handle it and guilty about doing it. And you go right through that friggin' cycle. It's like an eddy. Like if you've ever whitewater rafted, you don't want to get stuck in the eddy at all. And, it's like an eddy that just keeps never ending loop that goes around. And so really going through and digging deep is what's required to get out of that.
For sure. Like this guy, I didn't give him, obviously, I had a good idea as to what was going on for this guy, which was what we're talking about right now. I didn't take him through this, it goes in depth as it, because I wanted him to figure some of this stuff out on his own. So he's away doing the work right now, but by the time this is released, we will have spoken again, and he'll be further down this path. But the thing with this guy as well was that he knows how to speak up when the resentment builds. So, we know it's not an issue with knowing how to address the resentment. And he knows that it was just a story that he was telling himself. Oh, I don't have time. Oh, well, I've got to do this for them. Oh, well, I've got to be there.
I'm dying to know who this guy is.
You hit the nail on the head. The reality was, it's the unconscious commitment as he goes to embrace and enjoy a new level of freedom, a new level of fulfillment, a new level of success. Yeah, he's getting pulled back. And a lot of it is like, what will people think of me as well, right? Because to your point, the identity, if he's surrounded, luckily for him, he's in the inner, I'm not going to say what he's in because I'll give it away.
I know he is now.
I almost said it then. It rolled off the tongue, almost. He's surrounded by some amazing men who live in a similar way. So point being is, though, for a lot of the guys listening, maybe they're not. And if you're resonating with this, then sometimes what comes up for people is, okay, what will they think of me? If you're out on the golf course on Wednesday afternoon, instead of taking calls, will people think you're lazy? Will people think that you've taken your eye off the ball? Will people think all these stories that can, to your point, Doug, create conflict? And that's what can trip people up. Whereas you get to, one, do the work to dive into the story. And then two, once you're aware of it, you've just got to take action in alignment with where you're really feeling pulled to go. And yeah, there's going to be some fear and some doubt and some worry as you do this. And yeah, uh, the ball may get dropped while you're on the golf course, but I'm sure that everything will be okay, right? As long as you've got the right checks and things in place, which I'm sure you do have, or you will have. But one thing I know for certain is that you can't allow yourself to fall victim to this story, because otherwise you're never going to overcome it, and you're always going to stay stuck in that eddy.
Yeah, like, listen, like whether it's your marriage, whether it's the guilt shame loop, whatever's going on for you guys, there's always ways like working out to improve upon it. And you and I go through this, Tim. I mean, you called me up and say, I feel guilty because I'm taking time off, right? And I just don't want you to think that I'm, being lazy or something. Or I went to my son's t-ball game and I'm sitting there watching my son play t-ball. And this is a story about me, not the story about these guys I'm going to share about. Is, a number of the guys work a lot of blue collar jobs, and they were talking. They're like, oh, I told my foreman, fire me if you have to. I'm going to my son's t-ball game. And they were, talking about, I'll lose my job to be here. Meanwhile, other guys couldn't get time off work to watch their kids play. And I felt guilt and shame in that moment. And I was only for a little bit, but I was like, felt so guilty that I created this lifestyle for myself and my family that allows me to be at all my son's t-ball games or swim meets, or, I mean, he's only 5. But that was really important to me. And I worked really hard to make that my reality. And so again, I caught myself immediately in this guilt and shame. And then I had some great conversations. These guys are amazing men, great conversations with them about other things. But it instantly came up, which triggered a subconscious story in my mind, right? About me and et cetera. So I share that with you because a lot of guys that listen to this podcast in particular are struggling in the area of their relationship, their marriage, right, with their significant other. And what happens a lot is the stories that come through. And this is why we immediately tackle with the guys that come through the activation method and exercise where they go through their stick. We call it the stick man exercise. And guys are going to go through this exercise and really look at what's going on. What are those unconscious commitments and unconscious stories that have been holding them back? And again, they're unconscious. So just like this guy, you don't know them. You can't see them yourself. They're unconscious. But I can tell you if it's a pattern. If it's happened more than 2 times and it doesn't serve you well, like this guy's saying, or if you're listening to this, if you and your wife argue often or you fight or you go to initiate sex and she turns you down, and it happens more than twice, or she complains about something more than twice, you're in a pattern, right? And that's one of the first things we take the men through in the activation method is going through this pattern. Right? What is the pattern? How can we figure it out? And then, of course, we do the triadic connection, which we talk about a lot in this podcast. You can look at other episodes, which is the tools to do so. But you need to go through that and isolate it. And that's how we started off with if you're in the activation method, your coach is going to walk you through this process. And it's an amazing clearing process, and one that gets to be revisited often and frequently for each of the guys.
Yeah, for sure. So I know we've mentioned a lot of steps that the guys can do, but if there's somebody listening to this right now and they're resonating, maybe they're bouncing off the edge of an upper limit, it's been showing up with the resentments, the stories they're telling themselves. What would you say are 3 things they could do right now to break through that ceiling?
Yeah, awesome. First, foremost, recognize if there are any patterns that you're seeing, or if you're seeing yourself bounce off. I know that sounds like a given, but you got to be conscious about your unconscious commitments, right? You got to bring them to the forefront, bring them to the light. So that's step 1. Step 2 is if you haven't already, talk to one of our advisors, do that. Just go over to thepowerfulman.com, simple to remember, right? Thepowerfulman.com. There's a start here button, and it takes you to a simple form where you can get set up to get on a call with one of the advisors, right? And just do that. There's no obligation there, but they're going to give you some insight. I mean, these are professionals. Step 3, what you want to do if you're in this situation is laugh at it, right? You can't, just like an eddy, right? Or a current. So I grew up by the beach in Southern California. The worst thing you can do is fight against a current, right? You're going to lose. So same thing with this. You got to be in a playful spirit, guys, right? I guarantee your access to power for 98% of you, and this is based on my made up statistics, but it's based on my experience working with thousands of guys in person, virtually, et cetera, is that when you're the most in your power when you're in a playful state, when you're having fun. And so if you try to muscle your way through this, it's just not going to work. It's just not. So have fun. Step one, right? Recognize this, bring it to the light so you can actually see it, look at it and go, okay, wow, this is a pattern. My wife and I have been fighting for years, or she's been telling me or hinting towards me this thing, or whatever it may be. It's a pattern. Does it serve me? Yes or no? Okay, great. Now you know, at least you can bring it to light. Step two, if you haven't gotten a call with one of the advisors, do it. Because the activation method, if that's the situation for you, it's a methodology that'll help you get out of this system. Step three is really something you want to do is get in a playful energy. Do not try to get super serious and look at this from all the analytical angles and put your engineering hat on, or, get Excel spreadsheets out. No, have fun with it. Laugh at yourself, enjoy life. It's a journey, and this is just one step to take.
Great advice.
Awesome, guys. As we always say, well, first of all, Tim, thanks for bringing this to the table. I love this conversation. I think I know which guy. I'm going to ask you off air who it is. It's driving me nuts. We love the guys that are through the program. There's so many, and they're just, we love them all individually and collectively. That I want to see who this guy is. But guys, as we always say, in the moment of action, in the moment of insight, take massive action. And we'll see you next time on the Powerful Man Show.